Welcome to the Weird Gig Podcast. I'm your host, Kara Kesselring, and today is episode number 9, and we're pleased to have stories from Istvan and his imaginary band. Istvan is a longtime member of the dynamic alternative music scene and a fantastic singer-songwriter, as well as a clever children's music artist. He has a new podcast for kids and families called Istvan's Imaginary Podcast. We'll talk more about it, as well as the release of his upcoming original kids album called Evie the Queen of the Insects. But first, Istvan tells the tale of his weirdest experience on a gig. The title of this story is The Hot Dog Party.
Hi, my name's Istvan. And in the 1990s, I started my very first band called Woo Woo Stick. And this, my dear friend, is the weirdest gig I ever experienced in that band. Stop! Now I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that you are not familiar with Woo Woo Stick. All right, so if that's the case, I need to give you a little background. Woo Woo Stick was weird. I think every show we played was weird. So to find a weirdest took some time, a little bit of thinking, a little backtracking. Now let me give you an example as to what an average Woo Woo Stick show was about. As a band, you have to play your hits, correct? So our hit was a song called Squash and Tear and Rip and Smash. Squash and tear and rip and smash. And in that song, of course, it being our hit song, there was a puppet show. And we did that at every single performance. There were 3 iterations of the puppet show. Behind the puppet show was some sort of pseudo-classical music that we performed in heavy metal fashion underneath. Now, if you have puppets, what's just a hop, skip, and a jump? Stuffed animals. We had stuffed animals. But we didn't just have that. We had stuffed animal sacrifice on stage during a song that I think you may be hearing right now underneath, called The Greatest Men Are the Most Alone. I would scour the alleyways and have great success finding discarded stuffed animals, the larger the better. And our singer at the time, Mike, was supposed to wield a chainsaw, like Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then recite a poem that was taken from the movie Better Off Dead, part of it, where if you watch that movie, he has a little stuffed animal bear that he gives to his girlfriend, and then the cool skier guy with the perfect hair has a gigantic bear, so it referred to that. But then it was also a reference and homage to Wendy O. Williams from the Plasmatics. Mike was supposed to wield the chainsaw over his head for visual effect, but at the same time he was supposed to use it to replace the noise solo that took place in the middle of that song. But that was customary at shows. And then also, speaking of Mike, he kind of wasn't sort of like the flamboyant lead singer that we were kind of looking for or hoping for. He was great, but he didn't really kind of jump out of his skin in the way that we were looking for. So for a period of time, in addition to like loading in amps and drums and those types of things, we would also load in a lazy boy chair, a milk carton or milk crate, and then a black and white TV. And we would set that up in the middle of the stage where Mike would sit and watch TV while he sang the song. So there's your background of what Woo Woo Stick shows were like. So to find a weirdest one, it was kind of tough, to be quite honest. Say hippo.
Alligator.
Now, I just mentioned Mike, our singer, our very first singer. And we were grateful to have him. And, Mike was great. But after a certain period of time, I was writing all of the music, most of the music, and the lyrics, and I really felt like I understood that I was the only person that maybe could present these songs. So I felt like I needed to move from drums to singer, which I did. Now, when I did that, we found our drummer, Steve Rogers, and what Steve Rogers brought to the band more than anything was enthusiasm. So one day at rehearsal, he shows up and he's like, guys, I have a friend whose brother lives on a farm in Peru, Illinois, and he wants us to come play. It turned into something called the Hot Dog Party. And the Hot Dog Party took place for 3 years in the 90s. I can't tell you which years exactly. But it was legit. It was a legit festival, completely 100% non-corporate and independent, and had a ton of, I mean, eclectic really described what it was. Not only were there rock bands that were playing there, there was modern classical, there was alt country, there, and what I am about to describe to you took place too. So the second year that we performed, and I must say that this was the most exciting show for us because at this show we were the headliner, and it was a big deal, and people were there to see us, and it was awesome. So in the second year, I arrived and we started to sound check. Everything was fine, and I left. And then what we did at the hot dog party was everybody camped on the property. We all stayed. So I went to go stake out a spot. As I was doing that, I heard rustling in the cornfield. So I stopped doing what I was doing and I looked over to see what was happening and preparing myself for whatever was going to come running out of the cornfield. I was assuming some kind of animal. I'm not from the farm, so I didn't know what to expect. But what popped out was a person. And I say person because I was so startled by this person and the way that they looked that I could not tell if it was a male or a female. I was startled because the person had no shoes or socks on. And this person's feet were filthy dirty, which, not surprisingly, they were just running through a cornfield. The person had long, dark hair that I could not tell if it was a wig or not. As I looked down, then I started to notice I thought I saw cuts on this person's face, which also very disturbing. Was not prepared for that. And the reason that's so insane that I didn't know if it was a male or a female, because then after I kind of like took all this in, I noticed that this person was wildly pregnant, like 9 months pregnant. And that, again, completely obviously freaked me out. So we made eye contact with one another. We stared at each other for a little bit.
Damn, slow down, baby.
And then this person went on their way, and I continued setting up my tent, preparing then mentally for the show. The evening wore on, we went on, and as soon as I turned my guitar amp on, nothing worked. And then as soon as that happened, I could tell this was going to be bad. You could feel the momentum leave the room, and I was literally withering on stage before we even started because I did not know what to do. We had all kinds of people there that should have known what the problem was. Nobody could figure it out. So I'm going to chalk this up to being immature. What do you do when that happens? What did I do when that happens? I sort of like forged myself into some sort of combination of Jim Morrison, Iggy Pop, and Gigi Allen, and decided just to like completely destroy myself in some way. So I continued to drink and I continued to hurl myself on the stage, and I quite honestly can't even remember the rest of what happened during the performance. But it was terrible. It was a failure. It was a public humiliation, and more than anything else, it was a disappointment. Now that's not the weird part. After the show was over, I must have just stormed off like a complete baby, went to the tent to regroup, not planning on ever returning to the barn or even talking to anybody probably. But I think one of my friends came and got me and said, "Hey, Istvan, you need to come see this." So I walked back across the farm and entered the barn, and what I saw, I was completely unprepared for. I saw that person from the cornfield, the woman who had emerged, and she was on stage, lying on her back. She was flanked by two men, one very, very straight-looking guy, and the other person, very Scandinavian-looking fellow, very tall, very thin, long blonde hair, I think wearing a bicycle outfit, meaning bike pants, that type of a thing. This woman's abdomen was completely exposed to the audience, and what they had done is they had placed contact microphones on her. Now, what was happening was they were trying to get sound from the fetus. It was this fetus's first performance, I guess. Maybe there were others, I don't know. But it definitely also had sort of like an alien abduction, probing kind of a vibe to it, which made it really, really startling. And again, the woman's appearance, I don't know that I captured it. She really was like a street person looking person. Adding the pregnancy to it was difficult to deal with, really, to be quite honest. But no one was being hurt. She was in Earlier in the day, she looked distressed. On stage, she looked completely content and happy, like where she wanted to be. And I guess it turned out one of the guys was her husband or partner, and He was a doctor, I was told. I believed anything anybody told me back then, I think. I don't know. But I, instead of being sort of like put off by this or completely like, freaked out, it was the perfect performance for the state of mind that I was in. It was weird. It was absolutely weird, but I loved how weird it was. I loved how crazy it was. I loved how completely polarizing of a performance this was because there was no pretense to these people. They were serious about what they were doing. There was no hurt or darkness to it. They just were there like scientists. Of course, we're going to do this today. And because of the hot dog party being what it was, whoever said, yeah, you guys can do this, I don't recall who invited them to perform. I don't know that these guys would have been getting lots of invitations around town. So I went from the back of the barn straight to the front of the stage, grabbed a chair, maybe pushed somebody out of a chair, I don't know. And then I sat down, I took in this entire show, and at the very end, I think I gave them a standing ovation because it completely recalibrated me. It made me realize that what I had gone through really, in the grand scheme of things, wasn't as bad as what I would have been dwelling on for a very long time. And I loved it. I loved the sincerity of the performance itself and the over the top weirdness of it. So that is it, you guys. That was my weirdest night in many, many weird nights and many weird nights and afternoons and mornings since then. But that one really stands out in my mind more than any other performance for being unexpected and just downright weird. I hope you liked it. Actually, I do believe in the times that we are living in that I consider incredibly weird. We are very seriously considering relaunching, rebooting Woo Stick 2, W2. And I'd love you guys to pay attention and come to shows when they start happening again, because a big part of that would be doing things that we wanted to do back in that time, but couldn't because of technology or whatever. And I think that we can accomplish now, and we will bring all kinds of new weird to you if we do. So by all means, check me out at Instagram at I am Istvan, Istvan. And you can also go to youtube.com/1STVAN, and I will definitely post Woo Stick stuff there as soon as it becomes available. So stay weird, you guys. Stay safe. And until next time, alligator.
We'll be right back. Where did you move on from Woo Stick then? What was the next part of the Istvan musical journey?
I was still afraid to let go of the Woo Stick stuff, meaning like be super ambitious with the music, the structure. And then after that, I had a revelation moment on stage. Did you ever play Lily's? Well, Lily's is unique, it's like weird kind of the way it's laid out and all that. And I like it, Lily actually, she's still there and she was real sweet. She helped me in a lot of ways with various different stuff. She let us rehearse there for kids band stuff and all that. But I was on that stage playing this interim group and I had like this revelation of like, what am I doing? Why am I playing so loud? There were like these like really like attractive young women 5 feet away from us at Lily's. And I felt like we were bludgeoning them with the volume of what we were playing. And I'm like, why am I doing this? I will probably always play smaller venues, which is totally fine. I'm not being appropriate to the place that I'm playing. And I just got so sick of the whole, in my mind, I was having this conversation. I've told this story before. And I'm just like, I'm done. This is the last show I'll play in this group. And then I was looking around the room like, God, this is like a folk play. Like I'm having a conversation in my head. It's like a folky place probably. Folk artists probably played here. I'm like, an acoustic artist would be good in this venue. And then I'm like, can I do this? Maybe I'll play acoustically. And it was so frightening to me because, having that volume is like a wall. It's like a defense for you, And it's just like, that's when I came up with the idea and the name of Istvan and his imaginary band. Because I'm like, I didn't want to be a boring singer-songwriter, or anything like that. So I'm like, I'll get again, like I like novel stuff as long as you don't overdo it. I'm like, I'll get an old drum machine, super simple, and that'll be my band. And then the songs will have to stand on their own 2 feet. I realized I was rebelling against the thing that I liked, which was songs. And I'm like, realized like writing a good song is harder than almost anything else. You know what I mean? It's harder than making some sort of avant-garde type of music. Write a good, not trite song, is like not an easy thing to do.
Right.
And from that day, I changed everything, and everything was great. Like, I didn't have to answer to anyone. I'm like, as long as I like it, that's all that matters. And if you really like what you're doing, I think that's the best thing you can do. And it's the thing that's going to draw people to you, if like you really love what you're doing, because there will always be haters. There will always be people that don't like what you do. And half the time it's just because they're mad that they're not doing it themselves. So it was a big deal to like make that step from the first stuff, because I was so connected to it in this really emotional way. It was really hard for me to like step away from all of that, because I put so much, time and effort and everything else into it. And because I was younger, when you're young, you don't have that perspective, I think.
Did you move into kids' music before your daughter was born?
No, not at all. And actually, when that happened, I was against it because of like stuff like that. Like me, I would act like a maniac on stage in Moostic. Like out of nervousness, I would drink. I didn't drink normally. I never had like alcohol in my house or anything like that. But when I get on stage, I would, and I would do it like kind of an ass, and I would behave badly sometimes. And when it happened, it was like this wonderful just reaction to her being born. I just was so, I was so moved by the whole thing, and I loved, and still do, it's different, but I loved being a dad from day one. I just loved it so much. It was the first thing I ever loved, like that moment of it, didn't question it. Loved the title dad. I don't like titles at all, but being called a dad was like the greatest thing to me. I love when people call me Evie's dad, is my favorite thing in the world. But even then, people were encouraging me to do stuff because we recorded. That's a whole other story of wonderful accidents with my friend Ryan, who I love. But of the recording of it, he started a studio. I'm like, I have these, I think, songs, like kids songs. You want to do those just to test out the studio? And working with him is like some of my favorite stuff to do. I love working on music with Ryan. And then people were asking me to play, and I kept saying no, because I didn't think I was the right guy for it. I didn't think I looked right. I didn't think my voice was right. I didn't think I was appropriate for it. And then we did the first show that friends who ran a little used record store, because I thought I had to have a band for this, because it was live. Everybody played. I was so accustomed to playing just completely solo, and I didn't think any of them would want to do it. So I thought that was my out. Like, they'll never say yes to this. And then they all said yes. And then we played, and I swear, Kara, it was like, I got up there not knowing one thing of what I was doing. And I had another conversation in my head, but it was a good conversation where I'm like, God, we sound really good. I'm like, this is really fun. And I'm like, and then we did a song called Run Around, which I still play. And do you know what my daughter and her cousins and the other kids that were there did? They ran around. And I'm like, this is hilarious.
Awesome.
It was the best feeling in the world. And then at some point, she got sick of being out there, Evie. So she came up on stage, which was not planned. And I'm like, I love, through what I went through in my life and all the craziness that I've experienced with like our old rock band situations, I love unpredictable stuff. It doesn't bother me in the least. It makes it not boring for me. And as long as no one's acting mean or terrible or doing something, violent or crazy, I'm all for it, because then I get to react to it and I get to make something out of nothing that I wasn't planning or preparing. And when she came up, she wanted to take the mic from me. And then the other little ones came up, and it was amazing. Honestly, it was like amazing. And I'm like, I love doing this, and it was just like, I committed myself to it 100% after that, because it just was so kind of meant to be and special and inspired by the best thing in my life, which was my daughter. So how can you say no to that at that point?
I love that. And how many years have you been working in children's music?
Boy, maybe Oh gosh.
Has it been
like over 10 now?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, over 10 years for sure. Like it's been a long time. I've gone through lots of stages of that too, because I was so committed to trying to keep a full band together, which I do miss, but it's just, then I realized I'd have to kind of, evolve it or devolve it, however you look at it, into me more going out on my own, because you know how it goes. I don't know how you do what you do. I constantly praise you for the work that you guys do and how you manage the stuff that you do. I don't know how you do it, honestly, and I wish that I could, but at some point it starts to become unfun and too hard, and I don't want it to be like that. But I worship anybody who's playing live music as a group, because it's so important, and it's the one kind of regret I currently have, that I don't have more people to show everybody, or at least when we were playing, what it is to make music as a group of people is critically, I think, important, and it's unlike anything else, it's different. And it's really when, especially when it's little people experiencing it, I think it's more important now, kind of more than ever before. But
what have you been doing creatively during the pandemic?
The CD is done, and I am going to deliver it to your house because this is a children's record. It's the most ambitious thing I have done. I hope everybody loves it. It's a story, based on true events, called Evie the Queen of the Insects. Now, Kara's beautiful husband, Patrick, he played bass and he's incredible. And it was so cool getting to work with him. This is the thing of, like, at least in recording, I'm asking if certain people might want to do something. I still want to do something with you desperately, honestly.
I do too. I would love that.
And I'm trying as hard as I can. So there are so many things that took place with this. So many, we had to wait because of the pandemic to not release it. And I'm glad that I held off. And also your daughter, incredibly talented, Iris, did one of the voices, which I am thrilled by the whole thing, because the story is about this little girl whose friends are insects. Evie, when she was little in real life, had this strange, I thought, bond with bugs. I don't know why. And it inspired me to write a song. And then there's a number of other things that led to this that I'll spare you. But it's cool that Evie's real life friends played the role of the bugs that are her friends in the story. And they all, I swear to you, all of these kids are so unique, remarkable, have talents that are kind of unreal, in my opinion. And it's wonderful that they contributed to this. I hope that they like it. So what I want to do is just I'm going to drop one off at everybody's house. I'm going to try and film it as like a little promo thing so people can see. Or almost like I'm a little bee going to people's houses, dropping this off, But
I love it. How can the listeners find it?
Well, I have actually, for the first time, believe it or not, after all these years, I've learned certain things, and other things I've learned nothing in music, but I have a release date. So it's like May 10th is the release date. So I'm actually going to have an official date when it comes out. There'll be like a little pre-sale, but the main thing, if anybody's interested in the stuff that I do, Instagram's a good way to kind of see certain things easy. So my Instagram is at I am Istvan, and Istvan is Istvan. And through there, I'm trying to do more and more stuff like through IGTV, and that's connected to, I also launched a podcast in the very first of the year. And for the first time, Kara, I am being punctual and releasing it with regularity. And I love doing the podcast, maybe more than anything.
Isn't it fun? I love it as well. And how can people find your podcast? And tell us about that and what day it drops and all of it.
All right, peeps, I'm going to get serious with you.
Yes.
But not really at all, because my podcast is meant to be funny and fun and weird a little bit, of course. I can't escape the weird in my life.
That's right.
Woo Stick was actually all this practice for it. I had puppet shows. I had all these various different things, not knowing, one day you'll be playing for kids and families, and this is just your training for that. But my podcast it's for kids and families, but I think anybody can enjoy this, because just like my live shows, I try to throw jokes out I always thought, kids aren't showing up on a scooter by themselves. Somebody's going to bring them to the show for the most part. So why would I ignore that whole part of the audience? I don't. And if I don't like it, it's going to show. So I have to like it too. So the show is called Istvan's Imaginary Podcast. It is many shows with characters and music. And for me, the nicest thing, Kara, that I've discovered on accident through the podcast is I've written brand new music that I didn't plan on writing because of the way that the shows have unfolded and the little, scenarios and kind of like stories that take place. And some of the songs I absolutely love. Some are just absolutely ridiculous, but other ones are, I just wrote a song called Diamonds for Your Crown, which really turned out wonderful, I think, and was inspired by this gentleman who stopped by, Gramps, a fan who contacted me. And he was regaling me with ideas for songs. You ever get people coming up to you all day long, giving you suggestions of what you should do? Gramps did. All of his were based on old-timey folk tales that always involve children being devoured. And I'm like, no, I don't think I can use that as subject matter. So I'm going to maybe do one that it scratches that itch for you. And I turned it into that song, and it turned out great. But for me, the podcast is like the perfect medium for what I do, because I get to do characters, I get to play music, and it never gets boring for a second, which is hugely important to me, and I love it so much.
It's nice to have a deadline. I'm a deadline person, and it's nice to have parameters. Like, I think there's something that is that spawns creativity within parameters for me. Without it, I just don't know where to begin. How often does a new episode drop?
I started with every other week because I didn't want to go too crazy. I wanted to get my feet wet with it all and try and, again, build up an audience of people. And then if I found that there was enough interest, then I would maybe do it every week. But every other week, I think, feels pretty good to me. And I'll probably keep it that way for the time being. But, religiously, I am releasing it every other week. And I'm actually about to lead up to, I'm going to do like a 4-part series, I think, just to really promote the Evie record. But I'll have interviews and all kinds of different stuff. And then each show I'll play 4 bits of music, songs and narration from the record. So you'll hear it kind of in its entirety over that period of time. And then the final one of the 4 will fall on the release date. So I'm actually being legit. Yeah. And yours, I think your idea is so clever and so cool. I think it's such a smart idea. And really, for somebody who just was randomly looking for things, it's something that I definitely would stop and bother to listen to, or at least investigate. I think it's a genius idea.
I think it's a fun little nugget of entertainment. And I think that it's fun because I think musicians are used to talking to other musicians, so there's a lot of inside baseball that happens. And my hope is that this sort of pulls the veil away for the muggles, the civilians, to see kind of the silliness of what it is that we do.
I love that you're doing that. I mean, from the beginning, when I heard about the show, I thought it was such a smart idea on your part, and a fun idea too, right away. You knew what it was, and it would be something that I think anybody would want to come back and hear another story.
Right.
If there's anything I wanted to be bigger, it would be the podcast, because for me, I do love playing. Of course I do. But prior to the pandemic, I was working hard to do a number of different things, and the pandemic just, devastated a ton of people, and I'm one of those people. I had just started a whole other thing, a teaching thing, and that was brand new to me, and that just got crushed. And all of this time that I've lost was meant for me to be learning, kind of on the job, basically, of what I was going to do and how I was going to, really truly craft something that I thought was unique to myself, but also in keeping with what I see as, things that people do that work and have an impact and mean, something. So the part of it too is for the shows that I do, they're, too, though. I mean, I know what you go through. It's hard. It's hard to do shows.
It is.
And for me, because of the way, even though it's an asset, I think when we start to come out of this, that I'm outdoors, it's brutal. It's summer, spring, and it's hot. It's 1,000 degrees, no joke. And it's just I want to reach more people, period.
Right.
And I want to do it in a way that is a gift to them. You know
well,
what I mean?
and you're riveting.
Something.
You're riveting. You
you're
have,
sweet.
You're hilarious. You have a pleasant voice to listen to, and you've got a lot to say.
You're very nice to say that. But this is the thing for us to have an opportunity, hopefully, by showcasing your idea is so strong and so cool, and it's just another facet of who you are, another facet of who I am. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thanks to Istvan for joining us on the show. You can find Istvan's Imaginary podcast on all podcast services. You can check out more about Istvan, his children's music, at www.istvansongs.com. We'll have info about Istvan and Woo Woo Stick on our weirdgig.com website. New release Evie the Queen of the Insects is released on May 10th. On Instagram, you can find Istvan at I am Istvan. Please follow the Weird Gig podcast on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. We're also on SoundCloud. Leave us a review if you feel so inclined. Please be advised that this broadcast is intended to include a fair report or summary of commentary by one or more independent content providers. Any opinion expressed during this broadcast does not necessarily reflect the views of anyone else involved in conducting or presenting these interviews. We're leaving you with a song by Istvan called Pretty Beautiful. Join us next week to come for the stories and stay for the weird.
To walk with me and I will tell you what I know, then you, yes, you can do the same. Then at cars we will throw balls of snow, and we will walk all day and night and see just how far we can go.